Om Sahana Vavatu Sahanau Bhunaktu Sahaviryam Karavavahai Tejasvinavadhitamastu Ma Vidvishavahai. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. We'll chant chapter 5, verses 11 to 20. Kayena manasa buddhya kevalairindriyairapi yoginah karma kurvanti sangham tyaktvatma shuddhaye yuktah karma phalam tyaktva shantimapnoti naishtikim ayuktah kamakarena phale sakto nibadhyate sarvakarmani manasa sanyasyaste sukham vashi navadvare pure dehi naiva kurvanna karayan न कर्तृत्वं न कर्माणि लोकस्य सृजति प्रभुः न कर्मफलसंयोगं स्वभावस्तु प्रवर्तते नादत्ते कस्यचित् पापं न चैव सुकृतं विभुः अज्ञानेनावृतं ज्ञानं तेन मुह्यन्ति जन्तवः ज्ञानेन तु तदज्ञानं येषां नाशितमात्मनः तेषामादित्यवज्ञानं प्रकाशयति तत्परम् तद्बुद्धयस्तदात्मानः तन्निष्ठास्तत्परायणाः गच्छन्त्य पुनरावृत्तिं ज्ञाननिर्धूतकल्मषाः विद्याविनयसम्पन्ने ब्राह्मणे गविहस्तिनि शुनि चैव श्वपाके च पंडिताः समदर्शिनः इहैव तैर्जितः सर्गः येषां साम्ये स्थितं मनः निर्दोषं हि समं ब्रह्म तस्माद् ब्रह्मणि ते स्थिताः न प्रहृष्येत् प्रियं प्राप्य नो द्विजेत् प्राप्य चाप्रियं स्थिरबुद्धिरसम्मूढः ब्रह्मवित् ब्रह्मणि स्थितः. Hari Om and Namaskaram to everyone. The last week we left with a question. The question was, explain the statement, God created this world. We had raised this question in the context of the 13th verse that we were doing. Have seen some wonderful comments in the group. Some of them are technically sound in the concept, and some concepts could be needed, a revisit needs to be polished. Now, this statement that God created the world, it was an answer, was a clarification given by the Mahatmas to appease an inquiring mind. When a student inquired, wanted to know, what is the origin of this world? Who created this world? Everybody had an argument, a logical argument, that for wherever there is a creation, there is a creator. There is a cause, there is an effect. So they started applying that logical argument to the world, which they would apply logically to any creation. Is it not? You see a house, you posit a house maker. You see a pot, there's a pot maker. You see a watch, there's a watchmaker. You see a car, there's a car maker, etc. So therefore, they continued with the argument and said, there is this mighty world, there has to be a creator. So when they asked this question, who created this world? They just gave a ready-made answer by saying, God created this world. Oh my God, that's so nice to know that God has created this world. And some people go and say, God created this world with a lot of love for his creatures and creation. He did with great love. He has so much love and concern for all his creation, his creatures and his beings. There's so much of love in his creation. Oh, so nice to know. I'm blessed. And there ends the inquiry. But as a true inquirer, I wouldn't be satisfied with that answer. So should you not be satisfied with an answer. Because when you say God created this world, that word God is just, in fact, remember, the moment we say the word God, God is an unknown term. God is mere a postulation. God is a mere assumption. We do not know what God is. God is unknown to us. It is just like X in mathematics. You do not know what God is. An entire spiritual journey is to figure out what that unknown God is, isn't it? And that unknown God is only known once you get to that state of self-realization. Till then, God remains a mystery. It's unknown. So just by saying God created the world is a mere assumption until it's proven, until it's experienced, until it's understood to its core, to its reality. And thereafter, many, many theories that have sprung up, many theories that just were floated to appease the mind. But a true mind will never be satisfied with that answer. In fact, if you go along with that fallacy, in fact, with the statement that God created this world, in fact, there is a logical fallacy in that argument, a serious flaw. Many gurus out there will not tell you this because they're quite content in satisfying the superficial inquiry. Only a true seeker will go and knock at the door of the guru and say, what are you saying? I don't think there's any truth in that statement, because a true inquirer questions it. And if you have questioned that assumption that God created this world because there has to be a creator for any creation, and that creator is God. If you say that that is the argument, and let's go with that argument, that God, the creator, has created this world, then you are seriously attributing certain motives to God, because there cannot be any creation without the very desire or the urge or the motive to create, isn't it? There has to be the urge. The pot maker has to have the desire to make the pot. He has to identify with the desire to make the pot, and then he goes about in the art of creating that pot making. And then there's the creation of the pot. Without the urge to create that pot, there cannot be the creation of the pot. Similarly, a musician must have the urge to sing, or an artist must have the urge to create that piece of art. Without that urge to create, without the identification with the urge to create, there cannot be a creation, isn't it? It's not that artists are all the time creating art. It's not that musicians are all the time singing. They need to get into that right frequency, the right mood, the right environment, the right mental state to be able to bring out that creation, isn't it? Sometimes painters, artists have done a piece of art on a canvas and it's just halfway done. They just left it aside. I said, I've not got the mood to go back into it and finish it off. So they're waiting for the right mental state to go about and finishing it. So there is a very certain urge or desire or motive. Now, if you were to say that God created the world, you are bringing down God to a state of a mere mortal, which is you're attributing desires and motives and intention to God. So there is a prima facie fallacy in that statement, God created the world. So first thing you got to do is press the delete button in your mind. What is the delete button? Delete button should be, Ashama, what should be the delete button? Don't worry, I'm not asking you what created the world. I'm only saying what should you delete, not what to be inserted.
To be deleted, that the statement that God created the world.
Have you already deleted?
No, no. That is what is being said. No?
So have you deleted it, or would you consider deleting it?
Let me think.
That's the right answer. You should consider that after hearing out the entire explanation. But please, I confess, if I'm not able to convey the concept is one of the subtlest of ideas. There's no guarantee I'll be able to convey it. There's no guarantee you'll be able to understand it, but it's a humble attempt. All right. Now, the question was raised in the context of the discussion we did last week, and the concept, it will be very well reiterated in the 14th and the 15th verses, which we'll soon get into. So if you don't get in the little explanation I'm going to give now, you will very clearly see from which perspective the concept is coming from. Okay, so please hold on to the idea. Don't accept it, don't reject it. A job of a student is to receive it. You don't accept it, don't receive it, don't come to conclusions, because it's not something I'm producing out of my own mind. This is something, an idea which first came to me, it baffled me. And we just kept pondering and reflecting and assimilating this idea, and slowly it sinks in. It takes a lot of time, and these are very subtle ideas. It's not something you can grasp at tip of your fingers. It's one of the subtlest concepts of Vedanta. Now, as we have said, what you got to be very clear is they put a serious question mark to the statement, God has not created this world, because if he has created, you are attributing motive to God. Then what exactly has created the world? It is, in fact, the answer is, Harishji, can you please type this out? The answer is, it is ignorance of God that has created the world. It is not God, but it is ignorance of God that has created the world. Now, what is this ignorance we are talking about? Annapurnama, don't look at it with such confusion. Huh? I know you're looking very strange, confused. What is the statement is making? First time I'm hearing something like this. Correct? Huh?
Exactly. Now, Hari Om Guruji.
Carry
Actually,
on.
it's more baffling that God also can have ignorance, and really, it hits you like.
No, no. It is not God having ignorance. It is, see, what that statement, ignorance of God. It's not God's ignorance. If you put it God's ignorance, then there is a fallacy even in that statement. We're not saying God's ignorance. It is ignorance of God that goes about creating the world. Means God, the world exists for you and me. World exists for all of us because we have not understood God, because we are still ignorant of the reality.
Okay, it's ignorance about God that
Ignorance about God.
makes us appear.
The world
Okay,
appears
thanks,
real
Guruji.
to you and me, isn't it? The world appears very real.
Yeah, yes,
The world appears very real
correct, correct.
because you and I
Uh,
have not understood nor realized God. So it is ignorance of about God has created the world.
Understood. Oh,
Just an
thank you, Guruji.
example.
I mean, it should be looked from this angle, like
Yes.
from our
This
side.
angle only and only from this angle. No other angle, please.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
Uh, in
Thank you,
fact,
Guruji.
yes, most welcome. So is exactly like a simple example. It is ignorance of the rope brings about the creation of the snake. You can't go about saying rope has created the snake. It was only possible on stage where a magician brings about a snake, where he shows you a rope. He shows you a rope on one side and then brings about a snake. Only a magician can do that. It's only magic. Even there, there is no reality in it. It is just some trick. No magician, no human, no God can convert or transform a rope into a snake. A rope is a rope, a snake is a snake. But when a boy sees a snake where there's a rope, you go and tell a boy, man, there's no snake there. I think you're mistaken it. It is your ignorance. I put a rope there. The reality is rope there. You take him with you with a torch in the dark, in the background, in the backyard, and show him that with the torch. Is this where you thought you said you saw a snake? Yes, Amma. See, it is no snake. If it was a snake, it would have gone by long now. It is there, is because it's only the rope, it's not the snake. So it is the ignorance of the rope that brings about a snake. Exactly the same way, it is ignorance of God that has created this world. This is a very powerful argument. You can seal the concept with this understanding. So the first argument to say that God has not created the world because you'll be attributing motives to God. And the argument to establish that it's ignorance of God has created the world is the argument that explains is not knowing the truth creates the world, which is a reality for us. Now, to expand on this concept, from the standpoint of view of the great men of realization, those who have attained that state of God realization, what have they proclaimed? They proclaim that the world is Maya. The very famous words of the Shastras, the very truth declared by the essence of the Vedas, which is Brahma Satyam Jagat Mithya. Brahman alone is real, the world is an illusion. So, from the standpoint of the men of realization, from the standpoint of Brahman, Brahman is real, the world is illusion. Exactly like from the standpoint of the mother, she says, rope is the reality, the snake is illusion. Isn't it? The mother says, no, there is no snake there, it's only a rope. Exactly the same way the Mahatmas are saying, please understand the illusory nature of the world. It is only a Maya you're caught up in. The reality is Brahman. And since there is a fair amount of ignorance of the rope of Brahman, you are creating a world where you should see Brahman. Therefore, it is ignorance of God that creates a world. The moment you see God as God, what happens? Sitaramji, it's very troubling me. You're holding your head like that. I wonder where are you looking at? Why have you put your laptop or computer under the table? That's a new position you've got for yourself. Can't hear you.
Can you hear me now?
Yes, now we can hear
Yeah, my table is a little small. It can't fit both my notebook and the computer. So I kept it a little below on the bed.
Fair enough. But you might end up a neck problem after the class. Be
No,
mindful
that's
of
possible.
that.
Yeah, but easier to repair the neck than a computer if it falls.
No, it was concerning me. You're holding your head. All okay? You understand the concept so far,
Yeah,
so good?
I'm all well. The thought that you mentioned was very perplexing.
Which is?
The perplexing comes from the fact that it's right. This entire world is created by our own ignorance about God. So Maya, but it's so difficult to imagine if it's not Maya, then what would we see? Okay,
Sorry? If it's
if
not?
it is not Maya, then what is there to see?
What is to be seen is Brahman, is the reality.
Yeah, but how do we see that?
It's like, no, that is what we don't understand. It's like,
Exactly.
what is the life of a blind person?
Hmm.
When there's so much to experience, see, and someone is blind or you blindfold yourself, you know what they're missing, isn't it? Exactly the
Yeah.
same way we are blindfolding ourselves to the reality. So we are caught up in the plurality of the world. And what does plurality create? Another word for plurality is namarupa, names and forms. And where there are names and forms, there is diversity. Where there's diversity, there is differentiation. Where there's differentiation, there is otherness. Where there's otherness, there is only friction and conflict. This is the cause and effect, how it all expresses itself. But the moment you see a oneness, you see there is instantly a harmony and identification with the world. But the moment you see otherness, there is conflict and friction. The plurality, the nama rupa, the names and forms, all that comes from ignorance of not being able to see what there is to be seen. So the master is saying, Brahman is, you are seeing nama rupa, you're seeing names and forms and differences. And all boils down to ignorance. It's a baffling concept. It's something you can hold on to it for the rest of your life and try to figure it out. It is just trying to experience that profound statement. It is ignorance of God. It's my own ignorance that creates this world. I think there was a very pertinent argument in the group when some of you have commented answers is how do you justify that it is your own mind or the world is a projection of your mind? It's also another way of putting it. Or what we are saying is it's ignorance that creates the world. What happens to the world when you go to deep sleep? The world disappears, doesn't it? For those few hours, the world doesn't exist. For those few hours, your woes and worries and anxieties disappear. But when you come back again, the world appears, isn't it? So it's all in your own head. It's all in your own imagination. It's all your own creation. It's difficult to fathom though, but that's the reality. So Brahman alone is the first statement, the first concept you must keep in mind. Always keep in mind, Brahman alone is real. Second point, the world is an illusion. Keep these two statements and then you build the concept around this. Brahman alone is real. The world is an illusion. This is from whose standpoint? Venkateshwar Garu.
Hari Om.
Hari Om, sir. Brahman is real and the world is an illusion. From whose standpoint?
Very difficult to understand.
Okay, I go back to the example we said. Rope is real, the snake is illusion. From whose standpoint? Was it not the standpoint from the mother's perspective?
Yes.
Isn't it? The mother knew that there was only a rope, there was no snake there.
Yes.
Exactly the same way. From the standpoint of the Shastras or the scriptures or the great men of wisdom, we are seeking their advice. They say the world is illusion, Brahman alone is real, isn't it? Now, from our standpoint, what is our standpoint? Sadly, it's a mirror image. Ulta. What is ulta of that, sir? That is not difficult to guess. What is ulta of that statement?
World is real and that is the.
Brahman is illusion, doesn't exist for us, isn't it? What are you talking, sir? What Brahman? What, where, which, where is address? What is God? We do not know what that is. So for us, the world is real. Our problems are real. Our worries are very real. All the stress and strain, COVID is very real. Everything is real. All that is bothering you is very real. What are you talking? It's illusion. It doesn't exist for us, isn't it? So what you must understand is from Brahman comes about ignorance of Brahman, and from ignorance of Brahman comes the world. This is the, as it were, the theorem which supports this argument. So first is Brahman. Harishji, if you can put this please. Brahman. Then comes the non-apprehension of Brahman. Non-apprehension means non-understanding, which means ignorance. Brahman, there is the non-apprehension or non-understanding of Brahman. And then comes the misapprehensions of the world. This is one of the most baffling concepts to understand. Brahman comes non-apprehension of Brahman, which in brackets you put ignorance, and then comes the misapprehensions of the world. Brahman, then the non-understanding of Brahman, which is ignorance or non-apprehension, and comes the misunderstanding or misapprehensions of the world. So non-understanding is one, the misunderstanding is plural. I don't know whether you're following. Ushama, following? The best way to escape is by saying no. If you say yes, I'll tell you to please share your understanding.
Oh, it's a little difficult, Guruji.
End the portion. What is it that you don't understand?
This statement, what you just now said, it needs a little contemplation and a little, because what we believe is different, so it takes a little more contemplation and more thinking on this.
Yes, yes. You need to seriously, please give all the benefit of doubt to these great Mahatmas. None of it, I must confess, none of it is mine in it. It is this is what the Shastra is saying. And every argument is so profound, but you got to believe in what they're saying. And then perhaps you'll be able to come to terms with what they're saying. You got to give that benefit of doubt. Okay?
Yes, Guruji.
Okay. Now, what I just said is Brahman, there is ignorance of God or ignorance of Brahman, which is the non-apprehension, comes a misunderstanding or misapprehension. Now, all what they're saying is, where did this ignorance come from? The ignorance has come from Subramaniamji. Where did the ignorance come from? it is easier to answer the question with reference to the example. The rope and the snake. We said there is the rope, and then there's the ignorance of the rope, and then there's a snake. So my question is, where did the ignorance of the rope come from?
Am I audible, Guruji?
Very well, sir.
Yeah. The ignorance came because of my own belief that the rope is the snake. I just went by my own conditioning over so many centuries and all. Seeing is believing, and all that. So what I saw, I just believed that to be true. So that is where the core ignorance. It's like, as you mentioned the last class in Atmodha also. It's been the eons of darkness in the cave, which has been just there. That's all. So I believe the reality is the darkness itself. Until a master like you comes and shows the light, for us it's always it's darkness. So it's very, very difficult for us to come from the misapprehension to non-apprehension first thing, leave alone Brahman. So we are all at that stage, I would confess.
No. No. You all are way ahead. You have done so much of groundwork to get there. Just a matter of crystallizing. That's about all. Now, very well said, Ji. Very well said, Ji. Harish Ji, you want something to say? Sir, you are the host. Nobody can unmute you. You got to unmute yourself.
Can I say it now or should I say it later?
No, please.
Because it's just my understanding of this arising out of whatever a little.
Harish Ji, there are close to 50 people here. How can you give anybody's understanding except yours?
Correct.
Is it possible to read Rajima's mind? Is it possible to read Tata's mind? Is it possible to see Gayatri's mind? Is it possible to read Saraswati Ma's mind? You will only be able to say your answer, isn't it?
Okay.
Solungo.
You have emboldened me. So the way I see it is, if you take the statement that Brahman is the ultimate reality, you have another statement that the essential component or the essential essence of everything and every being is Brahman, the ultimate reality. Therefore, everything in the world is Brahman. And therefore, if that is so, to see it as the world and not as Brahman is the illusion.
Correct. Yes.
So the illusion is to not see it as Brahman, but to see it as the world. And if you believe your perception, that is why you say your perception is an illusion.
Yes, correct.
Would that be a logical way of explaining it?
Pure logic, chase logic. Now, coming further to that, then where did this ignorance come? If it is the very ignorance that is the culprit to the entire illusion, which is creating a perception, a reality, my same question to Subramaniam ji was also, where did this ignorance come from? Vasantama?
This ignorance comes from not understanding.
Not understanding is ignorance. It's another term for ignorance, it's not understanding. Now go back to the example. It's easier to answer with the example. Then we will fill it in. The boy sees a rope boy sees a snake where there was a rope. And the boy sees a snake because he was ignorant that there was a rope. So my question is, where did the ignorance come from? That's why I said it is baffling. It just, even if at the example level, it just blows us away.
Might be from your thoughts.
From your own mind, you say, as a Even Subramaniam ji said, something which has been conditioning for a long time. It's your own mind. All right. Okay.
From you have not realized it. You have not.
Yeah. If he sees now, when does that ignorance go away? Still with the example, when does the ignorance go away?
When you actually see it,
See what?
experience it.
See, experience what?
You touch the rope or
The experience or the apprehension of
the
the rope,
understanding.
the understanding of the rope instantly dismisses the ignorance of the snake.
Snake.
So what was blocking you and the experience is the ignorance. Now, where did the ignorance come from? The ignorance came from the fact that there was a rope, is it not? The entire problem came about because there was a rope. If there was no rope, was there a possibility that the boy could have mistaken it to be a snake?
No,
Really,
because the
there was
object.
a chance. The fact that he stepped on something soft and round and cushiony in that soft garden, he mistook it quickly to be a snake. If there was no rope at all there,
No thought would have arisen.
no thought, no misunderstanding, no ignorance, no non-apprehension, no misapprehension, nothing would have happened, isn't it?
Yes, Guruji.
So the fact now, Jama, now can you tell me, in comparison to the reality, the entire world that we see is a product of our own ignorance. Now, where did that ignorance come from?
From the existence of the reality, the Brahman.
From the existence of the reality, the Brahman itself. The fact that Brahman is there, you have not understood it, and then you have misunderstood it. All that simple. Brahman is there, you have not understood it, and then you have misunderstood it to be the world. And all problem is because you have not understood God, you have misunderstood it to be the world. If any one of us care to take a pause and examine and see what exactly there is and start understanding it, there is no problem. What you have misunderstood disappears. What is perceived, you see Brahman everywhere. Because the truth is, as Harish said, Brahman is everywhere. That is the reality. That is to be experienced. But we are not seeing it. We are only seeing everything other than God we are seeing.
Sorry, Guruji, I have a question.
Yes.
I don't know whether I can interrupt at this
First of all,
now.
First of all, you should never say sorry for a question.
No, it is definitely
No,
interrupting.
you got
But
to,
I
got to
can
take
ask
back
only.
that word sorry.
So kind of you, Guruji.
No problem.
So kind of. But I can ask only you. I've only heard about Tarka Shastras, in which during ancient times, to establish a truth, they have to go through that. They adopt this Tarka Shastra. In those times, where the arguments to establish the Brahman or truth, have it been anywhere near what we are discussing now? Just out of curiosity, I'm asking.
Could you clarify what is this Tarka Shastra you're talking about?
To establish anyone's concept, any Acharya's concept, Advaita, like that, they have to, there'll be others, there'll be other scholars, and there is something called, even in Tarka Shastra is, if I understand, is a part of Vedas only, to establish any one concept or for the others to accept one's concept. So is what we are discussing now, is it anywhere on those lines to establish the ultimate truth? Sorry if I'm not clear.
No. In fact, I don't think I'm able to understand the question entirely. Unless if you can clarify again, I don't want to answer without understanding what you're asking.
Sure. Adi Shankaracharya entered into an argument or a tarka
You
with
mean the debate?
Mandala Mishra.
You mean the debate?
Debate, yes.
Yeah, I understand.
Yes.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Sorry, I missed that word.
No, that's okay. That's okay. No, so are you saying that are these concepts to be understood to a debate, or what is it?
What we are discussing now, debating now, is it any closer to that on those lines what they have gone through?
See, debating is usually when you have an opposing opinion. You come from a different school of thought. Let's say from Advaita to an Advaita or Vishishta Advaita. There's always these three schools of thoughts where each one propounds a particular standpoint and each one is trying to establish. So Adi Shankaracharya, he went about propounding or establishing the Advaita school of thought. And he had to challenge people because people had different standpoints. But that is not the spirit with which we are approaching this concept or the study. The entire study is trying to fathom or understand the rationale or the basis on which this concept stands. What the logical arguments we give to accept it, because our intellects must be able to rationalize the statement. It can't be irrational, isn't it? In fact, the only irrational statement in the entire discussion so far is, what is
how
the
to
only
understand?
the only irrational statement in the entire discussion so far was,
That rope is a snake.
yo. No. What is the only irrational statement so far? Padmanima.
Am I right?
I'm sorry.
Okay, the God created the world.
Correct.
That is quite irrational.
That's the only irrational statement was the question.
Super.
Everything else is only giving you logic and reason. It is not the Tarka Shastra which you're talking about. It is just arguments to establish it, which we all need to take it up and ponder, take the examples to substantiate what the statements are. And the last statement which I made is the most quintessential, which is the ignorance of God comes from the very existence of God. The fact that there is Brahman, you have misunderstood Brahman to be Brahman. You're not understood and you're misunderstood. Now, a simple example I'll give, and I'll leave it at that. We'll come back to it at some time if required. The fact that I have taken this concept today, the fact that we have had a class, the fact that we have an interaction, there is a possibility that you have not understood what I have said. Balasubramaniam sir, there's a possibility that you have not understood what I have said. Only a possibility. I'm not saying you're not understood. There's a possibility that you're not understood and you have misunderstood to be something else. Now that possibility of not understanding, where does it come from?
From the very concept, we are not, there's no clarity. We get confused. That's the sort of thing.
There's no clarity in what I said or in your understanding?
Mind gets confused with so many things, we're not able to assimilate. That's
Correct.
what I...
No, the concept itself is little difficult to fathom. I've confessed it. Maybe I don't have, maybe I'm not able to clarify it as well it should have been, but give it a thought. But I'm just going to the example. Let's say if somebody has not understood what I have said and misunderstood it. Have you played that game? I don't know, what do you call that game? Let's say a group of people sit in circle and you convey a message and that person adds another word and conveys a message, and that message gets transmitted and comes back to the first person. What do you call that game, Rajima?
I think it's called Chinese Whisper, Guruji.
Why is it called Chinese Whisper?
because it's not supposed to make sense by the time it comes to the end.
Don't say that. Yeah, Subramaniam sir, why is it called a Chinese whisper?
Guruji, because the Chinese have never understood. They are always doing things which the whole world cannot understand.
Fair enough. Fair enough. Let's not get into that. Yeah, Shivaji, you wanted to say something?
We are very, very clear, Guruji. In this particular class, we are all very, I'm very clear, at least really confused. The clarity is very much there. The highest order.
But I've done a wonderful job today then.
But it's not that you can comprehend it, because the subject itself, as you said, it's amazing. The way I put it, I don't think that we could have gone anywhere near coming to the clarity, which is definitely not clear as of now. But it's the way I put it is amazing. There's no doubt.
Okay. Yes, Annapurnama.
Guruji, I am also an embodiment of confusion, not only from this question, I mean the current one we are dealing with, but from an older concept also, what we have gone through. I don't know, it might, divert the current session. We can take it up later if you say so. Like you said, jnana alone, karma alone, bhakti alone cannot, they are complementary in leading us to the realization. But there is a statement which is the only one I know from what I've heard in discourses. Like Lord Krishna himself says, Sarva Dharman Parityacha Mame Kacharanam Braja Mashuchaka. So you just surrender to me. So does that mean he recognizes the all three yogas? It's an old, what we have dealt with already, but I keep getting doubt when I go through them. So you can clarify whenever you feel.
Yeah. No, I think it's a very valid question, but a little out of context now. If you don't mind, I'll take it up independently
I understand.
at a later stage. I shall keep in mind.
Sure,
and take it up, Okay, right.
Sure,
Perfect.
Guruji.
Certainly.
Thank you.
Sure, thank you. So hold on to this confusion of yours. Hopefully there'll be some clarity. So sleep with this confusion and you will wake up little wise. That's my only appeal. Sleep with this confusion. Yeah, Sudhakar Garu.
I'll go a little further on what Shiva has said. My mind getting exploded. but at the same time, it's a thrill and an excitement also. As if I'm a child. When a child sees something very excited, and it is very interesting, and that is my feeling.
Really appreciate. I can understand that.
May I say something, Guruji?
Just a minute, Sitaramji. This is exactly the journey we all have gone through at some stage or the other, because it just baffles the limitation of our intellect. As I've said, it's something we have to hold on to this idea very dearly, keep reflecting on it. It's like constant manana thereafter, and then slowly it starts sinking in, and then it gets settled over a period of time. So if I can speak with whatever clarity, it's because of the decades of years of constant study and reflection. It's not something which you can just pick it up and then able to relate to it. I don't think so. So please bear in mind, these are very, very subtle concepts, and you don't come across this in books. You don't come across these in classrooms, because people are afraid of even teaching it, because it is very difficult to be conveyed. So I'm actually taking a big gamble by actually making open statements and trying to in fact, the only intention is to give you the entire truth and nothing but the entire truth. I don't want to hold back anything for the sake of any other reason. You know? And it'll all sink in its place. It'll all sink in its place. It'll all fall in its place. Be a little patient with the knowledge. Okay.
Yes. Yes.
Thank you, sir. Sitaramji, yes, sir.
Yeah, as I see it and understand, the confusion arises because of we are seeing this world with our uh, senses, by sight, by hearing, by tasting, etc. And there are so many different things. So to step back and say, look, I see different things, but they're actually the same thing behind it, is a very difficult concept because you're always being bombarded by only these sensory perceptions. You don't have the intellectual perception behind. How do you get that? That's where the confusion arises from in my mind.
See, in order for the intellect and the wisdom to be able to lend its vision, you need to get a grip over your senses first.
That's the problem.
You need to do not fall a prey to the mind, and that's when you'll be able to see what the wisdom and the intellect has to say. Because the only objective element in the whole equation is intellect, and we are just, it's like we are trying to, we don't stand a chance with the torrential flow of the water and down the plain, so you just get swept away. When huge logs get swept away in the sheer water current, what is you and me trying to swim across the water? We don't stand a chance. So our thought currents are so strong, our connection with the world and the reality of the world is so strong, even a stray thought of this gets lost or swept away. So it needs a lot of conviction or mumukshatva to be able to hold on to this ray of thought and say, let's examine this, and hold on to this as if it's the only ray of hope that will pull me out of the abyss or the quicksand. You know, this is the only salvation we have. So it's difficult, but you need to nurture this idea. I give everything to what you say, but you need to give in a lot of credit and then hold on to these ideas. Okay, Ji? Okay. Hari Ji, yes, please.
Guruji, with your permission, just adding to the confusion, if one goes back into the debates or the philosophical content of the debates of Adi Shankaraji, then, and taking on from the last statement I made, that the illusion is to see that it is the world, see it as the world and not as Brahman. That is the illusion. That's led Adi Shankaraji to the concept that is form the ultimate reality. What I see, is it what is the real, or is the perception the real? And he came to the conclusion that form is not the ultimate reality. And after a number of debates, and that led him to the concept of Satyakaryavada, which was that there is a pre-existent cause in the effect, because I am seeing it. So what is it that I see? There is a pre-existent cause in that effect, right? And therefore, if there is a pre-existent cause, nothing was brought into existence. And therefore, the world is an illusion. Therefore, God did not create it. And it, which is what is the logical flow of thought.
Therefore, this is the icing on the cake. The chapter is complete. So beautifully I have baked it in the cake and you have decorated it. The cake is complete, the confusion is complete. That's all I'll say. Thank you for the completion. Closing ceremony, finished. Sum up. No, nothing more needs to be done on this. There is 10% truth to what you have spoken and what we have said so far. Is just how much of it can we all come to terms with? That's the reality. After the class, what is the reality for you? What is the reality for me is what that's you got to examine. So if you are able to we can hold on to this idea, and then the message has some sense. It makes some sense. Okay. Now I'll just quickly move on to the 14th verse. But there's a question by Suresh Ji. They're asking, is Brahman and pure consciousness one and the same? Yes, sir. Brahman and pure consciousness are one and the same. They are different terms used in different contexts. For example, the word pure consciousness is used in the context contrary to the concept of conditioned consciousness. Conditioned consciousness means the individual self. The individual is also known as conditioned consciousness. So contrary to this, they call the Atman or the reality as the pure consciousness. Now the term Brahman is used in a certain context. The Brahman is the same truth when it expresses to the macrocosm. Means when the reality which is functioning through all living beings or through entire matter, everything in the world is pervaded by God. It's omnipresent. So when you talk of that omnipresent reality, they term it as Brahman. But when the same omnipresent reality functions through the individual, the same God which is everywhere is also operating in me, is functioning in me. When we talk to an individual, it is called the Atman. So Brahman and Atman are terms used to convey the same truth in different contexts. Pure consciousness and conditioned consciousness are used in a certain context. But pure consciousness, you can call it as PC, and B, the Brahman, are one and the same. All right? Then how do we define God? You cannot define God. God is an unknown thing. At best, you can give yourselves an approximation at its best. Rather, you can give yourself a best understanding as to what that state of God is through the experience of these great men. So when you listen to these great men, they are giving us an understanding what is God. Now, in the 13th, 14th, and 15th verses, he is giving us the concept of God. Now, in the 13th verse, he describes God as, go back to the 13th verse, he said, can we have the 13th verse, please? Yeah. So if you look at the 13th verse, we said, mentally renouncing all actions and self-control, the embodied rests happily in the city of nine gates, neither acting nor even causing others to act. Here he is describing the role of Atman or the reality with reference to the embodied. Embodied means with reference to a being. Now the Sanskrit word for that, please take a note of the three Sanskrit words I'll be using in 13, 14 and 15 respectively. Now in the 13th verse, he says, Navadvare pure dehi. Dehi means the embodied. He is talking about the reality which is confined, as it were, to the body, the embodied. Now in the 14th verse, he talks about how the very same truth which is confined in the body becomes Prabhu. The word he uses in the next verse is he calls it the Lord. And then in the 15th verse, he calls it as the Vibhu. Now we'll see what is there, but let's get on to the 14th verse. All right. न कर्तृत्वं न कर्माणि लोकस्य सृजति प्रभुः न कर्मफलसंयोगं स्वभावस्तु प्रवर्तते न कर्तृत्वं न कर्माणि लोकस्य सृजति प्रभुः न कर्मफलसंयोगं Swabhavastu pravartate. Now here in the verse, he describes that same reality as the Lord, which is the word Prabhu. Prabhu means the Lord. The Lord neither creates doership, na kartrutvam, na karmani. The Lord doesn't do any action, nor does he create any doership, nor karma phala sanyogam, nor the union with the fruit of action for the world. Svabhavastu pravartate, but nature manifests itself. Bank on this verse, rely on this verse to seal your understanding of the concept of God. Strange concepts of God are out there. Nobody understands what is the reality because there is not enough light thrown on these concepts of verses like these. So hold on to this verse. Now, what is he saying here? The Lord neither creates doership, nor actions, nor the fruit of action. Yes, sir. Now, the moment you say the word Lord, the Lord means He is the primeval source of all actions. He's a Prabhu, He's a Lord. In the Atmabodha, he says like a king, he says. Because of the king, everything happens. Raja Vatsada, he's a Lord, man. He has a lordship over everything he does. In his presence, everything happens. So the Brahman or the reality is the Lord. So the Atman is the Lord, but the Atman, what does it do? He says, it doesn't do any action, nor the actor. It is not the doership, nor is he interested in the fruit of action. No karma, no karta, no karma phala. Karma phala is the fruit of action. Karma is action. Karta is the doership, nor karma phala. Atman has got nothing to do with it. The God has got nothing to do with it. What actions you perform, who is the performer, nor in the fruits of your action, what you get out of it, whether punya or apunya, good or bad, you do, God is not interested. Oh my God. God has got no interest in anything that's happening. And where is the God? He just said in the previous verse, God is that which enlivens everything in me. It is confined in me. It is happily resting unconcerned. Being there unconcerned, it enables everything, but it has got nothing to do with action, nor the doership, nor the fruit. Now, when you and I perform action, what do we do? Ramanaji, when you and I act, what do we do, sir?
We'll interact with each other. And
No, what I'm saying is when you perform action,
yeah,
you are performing actions day in and day out. Innumerable actions you're performing.
yes.
When you perform actions, can you talk with reference to these three I just said? What are the, okay, can you repeat what the three things he says the Lord doesn't do?
Yeah, he's not neither a doer.
Yes.
He is not an actor. Like he's not the same.
Performing action.
Performing actions, and he's also not attached to the fruits.
Correct. Now, when Ramanaji performs action, what does he do?
Some way of what you call result of that, whether it is he expects results.
Okay. One, Ramanaji is very interested in the fruits of action, result oriented. I'm not pinning it on. I'm just examining. Next, what happens? Who is performing actions?
It's a mind. It's a mind is doing all that.
You are the individual is performing action.
Individual
you are performing
is
action. Right? You
yes.
are performing action, isn't it?
Yes, yes.
So you are performing actions. When you perform, When somebody asks you, who did this? What do you say?
I did this.
I have done this.
Yeah.
We have a notion of karta,
I,
the doership,
karta.
I and my. It's my creation. And we are also caught up and involved in the fruits of our action.
Fruits of our action.
So, are you all with me? Or only too heavy for you all? I know it will be a little heavy today, but a simpler concept here. So one side he's saying, Ramanaji, on one
Yes,
side
sir.
he's saying Atman has got nothing to do with the action, actor or fruit. On other side, when we are acting, we are constantly performing the action. We are constantly entertaining the doership of the action. We are constantly caught up in the fruit of action.
Yes.
Now, in order to switch from this to that, from left to right, what do we need to do?
We need to detach from what?
You need to learn to practice a detachment to what?
Our doings and fruits of action.
Detachment to the action, detachment to the doership, detachment to the fruit. By doing that, you're getting to the very source, which is the Lord, because the Lord is the self, the reality in me, and I am not this, I am that. This, in fact, is what he's saying. But everything is happening. Why is it happening? Swabhava. Mere swabhava means nature. Nature is manifesting itself. Now, what is the term? What is the understanding of the word nature? What is the philosophical word for swabhava? Ajima, what is the philosophical word for swabhava? He's just saying nature.
Guruji, would it be vasanas?
It is vasanas. Can you explain yourself?
Guruji, more than this, I will be exhibiting only my ignorance.
No. No. Your answer is apt. Swabhava, nature, here refers to vasanas. Now, when you understand each one, how should you understand each one? Each one is helplessly functioning according to his or her own vasanas or her own nature. Everyone is what they are because of their swabhava, because of their nature, because of their vasanas. I am what I am because of my vasanas. You are what you are because of your vasanas. And the truth is, the self in me has got nothing to do with my vasanas. The self in you has got nothing to do with the vasanas. And the Shastra is saying, you are not your vasanas, you are yourself. So the entire spiritual journey, Annapurnama, is to Sarvadharman Parityajya. Sarvadharman refers to all your dharmas. All your dharmas refers to all your vasanas. Parityajya, relinquish. Sarvadharman Parityajya Mamekam Sharanam Raja. When you renounce all your vasanas for my sake alone, then the Lord says, Aham tva sarva papebhya moksha ishyami masuchaha. I will guarantee you liberation and salvation if you have embarked on a journey of getting rid of all your vasanas for my sake alone. Surrender to this cause of realizing yourself, not falling a prey to your nature or dharma. You are relinquishing your dharma. When you relinquish your dharma for the higher, I will give you moksha, liberation. So it's almost a guarantee you get from the Lord that those who embark on this journey of renouncing the lower, you will always get to the higher. So that is what is said in the 18th chapter. If I'm not wrong, it's the 66th verse. I could be wrong in the number, but it's 18th chapter, 66th verse that says so. That clearly gives the reference. So this is the context. And I'll connect that karma bhakti jnana some other time, but I'm just trying to connect that in the context. Okay. So the Lord neither creates the doership, nor doer, nor fruits. Now we are all the time caught up in what we do. We are all the time caught up in who has done it. We're all the time caught up in the fruits. So as Ramanaji rightly said, we all have to develop and cultivate this attitude of detachment. If attachment is spelt out as I and my, detachment is a very bitter statement. The most bitter pill you have to cultivate or learn to inculcate is the spirit of detachment is I have got nothing to do with it. You have to learn to develop this attitude that I have got nothing to do with it. You know, people come and ask me help or take counsel or take guidance from me or advice, whatever they do. When they do so, I try to be of help or service or advice to them in whatever way I can. Now, having done that, what should be my attitude towards their concern? I have got nothing to do with it. Isn't it? But if I bind myself mentally to their problem, to their life, to their situation, what will happen? I literally become one with them. I'm attached and I'm bound, isn't it? So if it's easier to maintain that objectivity there, but to be detached to your own kith and kin, to your own situations, to your own life, to your own actions, I have got nothing to do. Let's say if you have a vasana for something, what should you say? I have got nothing to do with it. My objective is to get rid of it. If you have a weakness for something, I have got nothing to do with it. Because who am I? I am the Prabhu. I am the self within me. I don't want to fall a prey to any of the temptations, the weaknesses, anything that's going to bind me. So the most difficult statement you have to hold on to is, I have got nothing to do with all this. And that's the only solution, that's the only thing that's going to save you. Otherwise, you're only going to bind yourself, attach yourself. How do you attach yourself? My actions, I am the doer, I am doing my duty. It is not my duty. Have I not got a duty as a mother, duty as a grandmother, duty as a grandfather, duty as a manager? You have the duty of binding yourself. Therefore, Krishna says, Sarva dharma parityajya, sacrifice all your duties, man. Can you do that? Oh, I can't do that. Then waiting list. You're not qualified. But if you're able to sacrifice all your dharmas for my sake, then I guarantee you I'll give you moksha. That kind of a comfort and confirmation we get from the Lord. Assurance we receive from the Lord. So detach yourself from everything. You go about doing, but do it with the spirit of detachment. I have got nothing to do with it. Because the real self in me, he says, na kartutvam na karmani. Let's chant this verse once again. You will understand what the implication of the verse is. And then we'll conclude. Na kartritvam na karmani lokasya srijati prabhu na karma phala sanyogam swabhavastu pravartate. Once more. Na kartritvam na karmani lokasya srijati prabhu na karma phala sanyogam swabhavartu pravartate. Om Purnamada Purnamidam Purnat Purnamudachyate Purnasya Purnamadaya पूर्णमेवावशिष्यते. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. Hari Om. Shri Gurubhyo Namaha. Hari Om.